And you and I know this, that the best business is referred business because they sell you to their network, right?
Exactly.
And you're going to convert 8 times better. And the other beauty is you never, ever move on your price. Why wouldn't you look after that client like they're a VIP? And every client should be a VIP, whether they spend 10 grand with you or 200 grand, because you don't know where they're going and you don't know who they know.
Welcome back to the Sales Review Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount Jr. And today we have one of our favorite people in the sales expert world joining us. He's an expert in everything from prospecting to closing and negotiating. He's our number one contributor on the Sales Review University platform. We're so excited to have him in from the UK here in the Sales Review studios. We've got Mr. Tony Morris. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Same.
Before we get going, though, I do want to direct people to Sales Gravy University. So we are going to have you go take a course for free. That's code free course at Sales Gravy University. It's learn.salesgravy.com. This is the most powerful sales training engine on the planet. It allows you to take courses from 45 plus of the world's most leading experts in sales and sales leadership and marketing. And you can equip your team with the skills they need to win more and sell more every single week of every single month of every single year. This is live and on-demand classes taught by our senior Sales Gravy Master Trainers. Again, go take a free course if you haven't already. That's salesgravy.com or learn.salesgravy.com. And Sales Gravy University is where you can find all of that information. So, Tony, so happy to have you on the podcast.
Nice to be here.
I look forward to the conversation. One more call. I know that we were talking about that a little bit before. Where did Jeb get that? I know you talked about prospecting with Jeb in the podcast that you recorded with him. You know, I think it kind of stemmed from he he had this customer, and I think he tells a story on stage. He had this customer or prospect that was this big contract. I mean, they were in a 3-year contract that didn't renew ever, or renewed with the same company all the time. And he'd never gotten the contract, and it was like, Centos was the company that he was competing against. And so he figured out when that contract date was, and he started calling that person at 90 days out from whenever that contract was being signed. And he was determined based on his boss. He'd sold the biggest deals of the entire year, and he was like the number one salesperson in the company. And then he kind of coasted, and he had no pipeline. His boss told him he would fire him. And so he was determined. He made 100 calls a day, and every single day was the one more call was to this biggest contract that he could ever sign to that person. He left a voicemail every single day for 90 days. And finally, the person got back to him. And so I think that the one more call was like, that was the one more call.
Please tell me he won the deal, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but
yeah. But I love it though. It's simple, but it's so powerful. Most people quit early, right?
And most people do quit early. And I think that leads into a lot of the sales motion, and it does for me. I'm no different than anybody else. I'm not the most elite salesperson in the world. I'm not the fastest, smartest. I'm not the strongest, but we at Sales Gravy, we outwork people. And I know that that's sort of one of your philosophies as well. You're a hustler. We see you all the time, but people give up early, especially in deals. I think that there's almost a resistance to keeping the deal going when you feel like it's not being, perpetuated by the customer, like the prospect. They're not giving you the next steps. They're not indicating to you where to go from there. And people leave meetings without asking for next steps. And that's like our number one rule.
It's the most common thing I see, right? So I call it SAS. So you end a meeting with summarize. So you say, key points we talked about is blah, blah, blah. Have I missed anything? And they say, yeah, just that bit. Great. Well, look, what I'm going to do, action. I'm going to send you over a reference for you to speak to, et cetera, et cetera. If you can send me over your T's and C's so we can prepare for that and then schedule. Looking at my diary, I can do next Wednesday, 11:15 or 4:15, and then it's booked. And if you do SAS every time, you're in control, right?
And you do this every single day. You work with sales teams. What is the resistance? Do you hear resistance from salespeople for doing this? What do you actually observe in the field? I think for leaders, this is something that they have to deal with all the time. But as a salesperson, if it's in your DNA, like it's sort of hard to understand. But as a leader, and you have a team of 7 people, right? and 5 of them are not doing this. How do you start to encourage this, build confidence? What is it that you've helped these organizations do to eliminate the deals withering on the end of the line?
Yeah, you know what? It's a lot easier than people think. So if I was a sales leader, or I am a sales leader, but when I was managing my team, but the sales leaders out there listening to this, every single time a deal's in a pipeline, they say to the team, great, what's next steps? Simpler, what is next steps? And if the salesperson can't have an instant response, they've not done their homework. And then you say, right, summarize the situation. If they can't, they've not done their work. Because I think some of the common mistakes they make is they don't put the notes into the CRM, Salesforce, Pipedrive, whatever. That's an error, right? Because if I die tomorrow, we've got no opportunity, yeah, as well as I'm sad that the person died, as well as that, obviously, that comes first. But put your notes in and have a follow up. Because the truth is this, right? What gets scheduled gets done. If it's in the diary, you do it, right? If your boss says meet me at 4 o'clock, it's in the diary. So you need to schedule this stuff. You need to have that schedule, but get the client or prospect's commitment, because then they're committed, and that's a mini win, right? So I think that's quite easy. And I think the other point so I think it's a couple of reasons. They forget. I think salespeople just forget to do it. I think they're lazy. I think they're complacent. And I think it does come from the top that sales leaders are not on top of them enough, right? And I think if I look at a pipeline with a salesperson, often there's the maybe column. And it's a maybe column because they've not qualified properly, not done a good discovery, and they've not followed up and scheduled. That's why it's a maybe.
It's interesting that you have those 2 columns in the categories of my pipeline. When I've been in a place where I wasn't winning as much as I should have, the maybe column starts to, and it will always, but it starts to really outweigh the for sure's. The for sure column is, maybe I got 5 deals and I've had great conversations and they're easy and they're fun and like the people on the other end are great, and some of them don't close, and that's the heartbreak. Those are the really heartbreaking ones. And I think as a human being, you want to spend time with the things that are easy. Like we're like water, right? We always go to the lowest point. We want to go to the easiest way to win a deal. And if you only have 5 deals in your pipeline, and maybe they're big, but maybe they're small, you're going to work on those more with your heart because they're easy. But then you have the maybe column, and the maybe column starts to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And I imagine that when you are working with sales organizations, when you're coaching your own team, that maybe column is where you really make money. I mean, that's where you that's where you transform your life. That's where you transform your career.
Well, it's interesting. It can be the opposite. What happens is you get disillusioned. You think, I've got this $200,000 pipeline, but you don't. You got a $25,000 pipeline, and you're making yourself feel good. So every day, like, yeah, I've got this big pipe. And actually, it's not real. It's you haven't had the confidence. You've not qualified properly to know all the right stakeholders involved. You've not found out the decision-making process. That's very common, right? So I think, in a way, I'd rather a salesperson have a small pipeline, which is going to make them get up earlier and do one more call, and I think that's the key. So I think stop almost making yourself feel good because you got a list of maybes, and actually go out and do business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had an experience as a field sales rep, and it's always been more of my mode. I don't know why. I have no explanation for me. You can help me with this, and you're my therapist now. So I worked a small pipeline. And when I was telling you earlier, I was in the field for Sky, for Comcast. I was selling business internet services, and one of the things that I would do is I would have 8 prospects in a month. I had a monthly quota, and I had to hit it by the 3rd week of the month because their scheduling was odd, and there was really no breaks. There was no not quarters. You didn't have a full quarter, and then you like balls to the wall in the 3rd month of the quarter, and you were hoping you close things. Every month was balls to the wall. We would run these massive pipelines. My team would run these massive pipelines. They'd have all of these different opportunities in there, and it was the same conversation you just talked about, where people would they would forecast, I'm going to close this, and this. And the manager would go, okay. I would have like 3 or 4 opportunities that I would say, I'm going to close these. And I closed every single one of them, but I ran really lean. And I like what you're saying. It helps you get up in the morning and make one more call. And it was stressful, but I was confident versus inflated and unconfident. So why do you prefer that? I mean, just kind of dive deeper into that, maybe that mindset versus a really big pipeline.
Yeah, I think it's 2 or 3 key points, right? One is there's a 80-20. Wilfredo Pareto, the Italian economist, said 80% of your business will come from 20% of your pipe. I think that's the first thing. So know who that is. I think the second thing is you never want to put all your eggs in one basket, because the downside of having 4 or 5 is if they don't drop, you'll be in trouble. And also if they do drop, but then they cancel, you're in trouble. So you want to obviously manage that and almost have a diverse pipeline. I think it's the really important point. But I think the other thing is sales people always do take the easy option. Some of them are lazy and they have these bad habits, right? And I think you have to be consistent. And when I recruit salespeople, I want them in debt. I want them that actually, if they don't pay their bills that month, they're in trouble. Because I know not every salesperson is motivated by money. They are motivated from fear of losing their property, losing their partner, not being able to pay rent on time. That's a fear. So therefore, if they're in debt, that's gonna, I believe, push them, right?
Yeah.
And I think the final point is a sales leader, if they're a good leader, should know conversion from forecast to deal. And if I had 10 people and Tommy always said, I'm going to land this £100,000 deal every single month, and he always does 10 grand, we got a problem. Because then it's either he's stupid, it's either he's lying, or either he's not qualified properly, or all of those three. So, but it's the leader's job to know that and identify that and actually say, you know what, Tom is a good guy, but he needs help. There's a training gap, or he's just a liar. One of the two, right?
And so I know there are people listening to this podcast who span the spectrum. There are people who are not necessarily hungry because they have to be, but hungry because that's just their makeup. And those are perennial top performers. But there are people who are in that space where, they're projecting the £100,000 quarter, but they're closing the £10,000 quarter, and they want to change it, but they're not exactly sure where to go. So it kind of, things always sort of stay the same, and they're working with their leader, and they're worried about losing their job, but their heart's in the right place. So what can those people do to start changing the game up? Where can they start to pull levers that would move them from 10,000 to maybe 50,000 to 75,000 and so on?
Makes sense. No, really good question. So I think it's 2 or 3 things. The problem with having quite a small pipeline is you become desperate because you think, oh my God, I'm 3 weeks away from quota and it's not looking good. So then you get very desperate, and I call it commission breath. And no one likes commission breath, because when you're desperate, you just want, all you think about is yourself. I better hit target, as opposed to a professional of, I'm there to serve and help you. And I know you're in the same mindset, and so's Jeb and I genuinely want to help. And if I can't, I'll tell you. I had an inquiry yesterday, right? A big speaking gig in America. And I actually said, I'm not the right person. I know you found me on YouTube. I'm not your right guy. And she was taken back from that. And I said, listen, it'd be great in the future. But I said, I've got 3 experts based on our conversation. I think they're better than me. And I said, let me reach out to them. I'll introduce you. But she'll remember that, right? And when the right opportunity comes about, I'm getting it. And I suppose I'm lucky that or maybe it's luck, I don't know, that I've always got a very healthy pipeline, because for those sort of reasons. And then I'm not desperate, right? I'm not desperate. So I think that's one massive point, that you've got to be hungry, but you've also got to keep the pipeline always full.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what it ends up doing, and that your turn away from her, like, she'll remember that.
Yeah.
But it also prevents you from that desperation of closing deals, right? And then that customer is unsatisfied by the service. And if you're a salesperson, one of the harder things to do that I had a hard time doing was wrapping my mind around as being you should think like a business owner, because as a salesperson, you're an entrepreneur without the overhead of having to employ people, without overhead of product or operations, or the business has to incur all those expenses. But if you close a deal because you're desperate, maybe it's a software deal, and it's £100,000 deal, $100,000 deal, and you sign that contract, everything's like, woo, like, I've won the deal, like, fantastic. But you didn't qualify well because you were desperate. You didn't understand their situation. You sold the wrong product to the wrong customer. And then, they come back and it's 3 months later and they want to get out of the contract, and
it's going to bite you.
It's going to bite you. Finance is coming after you because they paid you a commission that they,
of course,
they're campaign.
Well, I think there's 2 big points as well. So one of the big reasons, not every time, but I would say 30% of The reason it's not converting is they're not speaking to the right people, right? We know you've got influence and stakeholders, and a lot of people struggle to really identify who they are. They struggle to, I guess, ask without being pushy or without offending or patronizing the influencers. So there's two techniques I teach, and it's really simple again. One is, if I say to you, Jeb Jr., aside from you, who else is involved in this project? And you'll say, me, Tom, Dick, and Harry. And then I do what I call my justification statement. I say, look, Jeb Jr., I need to meet you, but I also need to meet Tom, Dick, and Harry because they're going to have different questions to you. And I need to answer all of those so together you can make an informed decision. And then I take it away from you and I call this don't ask, tell of, look, looking at my diary, I can do Wednesday or Friday next week. When's best? Now, what often happens is the influencer will say, well, I don't know their diary. I said, that's okay. Let's find a slot for you. Let's provisionally book it. You speak to them and then we can get back to each other. It's a mini win, right? Rather than me chasing whatever it might be. All I'm doing is chasing to confirm the date or move the date, I think it's quite an easy win. But again, people don't do the easy things. That's what it comes down to,
And the psychological impact of that conversation where you say, let's provisionally put something on the calendar. What it does is it gives you leverage. Where they owe you. They owe
exactly
you
that.
Getting you Tom, Dick, and Harry's information and putting it on the calendar, and they have some ownership in this process. And they're invested in this process.
Great point.
If they have to go to Tom, Dick, and Harry and have this conversation, and now they're sort of an extension of you, and so they're actually selling the product that you're selling up and sideways, and now they're
an ambassador.
They're an ambassador, right? And they put their name on it a little bit.
Correct.
So it almost puts pressure on it to work out.
Yeah.
And we do this internally. We've got different vendors coming to our account management team, and I sit on the marketing team. And we have these different softwares that come in, and hey, if I think something looks really great, and I have a sales conversation with them, they go, what's the process look like? And I have to go sell it to this team member, and ultimately Jeb Senior. If I have to go sell it up, well, I'm putting my name on it a little bit. Yeah. That's my reputation. Absolutely. And I think as sellers, we don't take that into account very often. That if I'm talking to you, Tony, and it's your organization, and you go up or you go sideways, you're putting your name on it as well.
And it could affect me if we decide to do it. And they're like, Jeb Jr., you put this in front of us. Why did you endorse it without doing your homework? Right. And it's your reputation within the business. Right. I think there's another point, though. We lose deals because you're human. But for me, I actually quite like the loss because I'm always learning. Right. If you look at the greatest salespeople in the world, they are work in progress. And I remember interviewing Art Subject on my podcast.
Yeah.
I love Smart Calling was one of my first books. Love it. And he said this to me in my podcast. He said, no one graduates from the school of selling. I thought, I love that, right? We're always work in progress. A mentor said to me, if you're the most knowledgeable person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah. And I think the key point there is if I lose a deal or when I lose a deal, you have to get feedback. But this is the mistake most people make. The salesperson phones for feedback. Now, if the prospect didn't rate me, didn't like me, didn't feel I was credible, they're most often not going to say that because it's rude. So they'll take an easy out, and that's non-confrontational, like it was just your price, or it was just, it was my boss's decision,
right?
Which isn't always true. So the best way to do it is get a colleague to do it. It's the best way. And I'll give you an example. Yeah, the terminology I use is this. So let's say, Jeb Jr., you lose a deal to a guy called Rob, right? Rob's your prospect. I would phone Rob and I'll say, Rob, Tony Morris, thanks for taking my call. Reason I'm phoning is I know you've been dealing with Jeb Jr. and I know you chose not to move forward, which is absolutely fine. The reason I'm calling at Sales Gravy, we thrive for excellence, and we would really value your honest feedback of why you chose not to move forward with Sales Gravy or Jeb Jr. You will not offend him, and you certainly won't offend me. We just want to learn. So just help me understand that, if you will. And people love giving feedback.
They love it.
What great lessons is that? And now what also happens is their barriers go down. Because you're not selling, you're getting feedback. And actually you might say, you know what? That's a really good point. Jeb Jr. is not the right person for this. You need to speak to Laura. I think from what you've told me, she's the right fit. And all I ask of you is, can we have a second chance? Meet Laura, and then let's get some feedback. So it's a double win, right?
I like using your colleague for feedback. One of my favorite folks, Larry Levine.
I love Larry.
Yeah, he's so cool. And he talks about, you should always, how do you know? Well, do you go talk to your customers? Do you go get feedback from your customers? And I'm one of those people, and I'll self admit that it's very difficult for me because I think emotionally, I don't want the you sucked. You were pushy. You stumbled over your words too much. Your presentation was terrible. Like my ego.
Of course, we've all got one, right?
We've all got one.
We've all got one.
I don't know if I can handle it, but I like the colleague because it makes sense. And also, I think that one of the things that has always kind of held me back from those conversations is, well, if I've lost the deal for good or for bad, if they didn't like me, why would they give me feedback?
Well, yeah, and that's a very fair point, and that's why you don't do the call.
I think that's absolutely an amazing idea.
Yeah, and there's another point though. Another time to get feedback is when you win the deal. We don't do that, right? And I call it, we talk about your USP, right? Your unique selling point. I've got an issue with it. 2 reasons. One, is it unique? Who knows? And it's a selling point and no one wants to be sold to. It's commission breath. So selling point serves us, not the client. So I call it a UCB, a unique client benefit. It's all about them, not us. And the way to know your UCB is interview your clients and just say, look, I want feedback. You've been dealing with me now for a month, 2 months. Just give me feedback of, number one, why you chose us, not chose me. It's a bit egotistical. Why'd you choose us? And what's been your experience up to now? And then pick up all the different words they're using. And when you start to see common patterns amongst this feedback, that's what you use in your sales pitch, your presentations, your marketing material. Because if we know what our customers think, we're winning, right?
I love that, and I think it's vitally important. Maybe have a colleague do that too. I'm again self-admitting. One of the challenges I don't want to go find out that it wasn't me. What if it wasn't?
You're too sensitive, Jeb Jr.
I know. What if it was just my price, or what if it was the beauty of the presentation, or
But you know what? It's a point I really want to make to you, right? So I've been a professional speaker for 12 years, and I remember my first coach, right, a guy called Graham. He was an amazing speaker, and I paid him a lot of money. And I remember he came to watch me deliver, and we went for a coffee afterwards. I said, "How was I?" He said, "You were shit." I was like, "All right, tell me how it is." And he said, "Tony, it was horrendous." And I was like, "All right, chill out."
Okay,
right,
man.
Chill out, man. And he said, "Tony, you've paid me to give you my feedback. You chose me and I value that. But you've done it because you see me, whatever it is. I want to help you the best I can." And when he said, I thought, okay, that's fair. And then later on, when he did it again, he said, "Tony, this is my gift to you." And the gift was feedback. Right. And it's fair. So I actually see it from a completely different lens. I need feedback. And yes, sometimes I don't like it. If they said, "We thought you're a bit of a dick," it's like, okay, fine. But my wife says the same thing. But for me, it's about what can I take from it? And also actually just on that, if they did think I was a bit of a dick, maybe I didn't adapt to their persona. Maybe it is my fault, or I was just a dick. But often I didn't spot that they're buying patterns, how they saw the world, and I didn't adapt. And we know it's a massive error in sales, right?
This is a challenge for the sales profession. I think across, well, at least the cultures that we sell in, right? So the UK and in America, United States, very advanced selling cultures. We've been doing this. Capitalization's been happening since the industrial age. We're very adept to this kind of culture. But one of the challenges for sales is that it's arrogant. A lot of it is confidence, and arrogance and confidence are
fine
cousins.
line, right? Fine line.
And so, when you are working with sales organizations and you're helping them ask better questions, this is one of the areas that you're an expert in. And I love the courses that you have on Sales Gravy about this. How do you help a seller adapt? And ask questions so that it doesn't come off as arrogance.
Yeah. So it's such I get asked this a lot, right? It really is difficult because, look, we don't know if we're being confident or arrogant because it's not about us. It's the perception of your client or prospect. So they are going to take it a certain way. And also we are seen differently by different buyers. So, if you look at insights, a green buyer not normally will look at a red behavior who's confident, direct, arrogant, and they'll go, "God, that guy's arrogant." But actually, to a yellow behavior who's extrovert and empath like you and I, they'll go, "I wish I was as confident as him or her." So it's interesting. So I think the 2 points: one, know who you're speaking to, because one will think you're arrogant, one won't. But the second thing is sometimes preface with, "I hope I'm not coming across as arrogant," because that's obviously not my objective. I am so passionate about this and I know I can help you. And I just want to get that across. And if it comes across as arrogant, please don't let it. So by prefacing it, actually, and I think, yeah, okay, when he said he's not being arrogant, I take that now rather than just being confident and potentially arrogant.
And I think this is a great piece of language to throw into your arsenal, especially if you're a seller and you get to a point in a sales conversation. Like obviously there's your initial discovery and you have to, essentially I'm just asking questions the entire time. Like I'm doing almost no solution selling. I'm not selling at all. In fact,
Correct.
I'm just trying to make sure that we're even on the same page or that I can sell to
Absolutely.
this customer or prospect. And there comes a point where as a seller, there's two paths, right? The one group of sellers will ask questions all the way through, and they're sort of an order taker at the end of the process, which works
Absolutely
to some degree, obviously. But what happens is you never become an authority. And what you do is you help sellers ask great questions, but there comes a point where you have to step in and say, Mr. Customer, I've got to say this. I've got to tell you this because I do this every single day. And that can come across as arrogant.
Yeah.
And throwing in that little piece of language, like, I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant.
Yes.
Because I'm just passionate about this. And I work with, 50 customers in the last quarter that are dealing with some of the same challenges, some different challenges, but where I'm helping them with the solution. Can I give you my 2 cents?
And it's a really amazing point you've made. And actually, you can make it even just to another adjustment, stroke the ego. So let's say I'm speaking to a global sales director. I'm saying, you're a global sales director. I could never do what you do. And the feedback I've had from your peers, you're sensational. And I applaud you because that's a tough gig. My job is to help your team and help you develop them. And I hope this isn't arrogant. I'd just like to give you my valued advice or share my experience. Now I've prefaced with, I can do what you do. You're exceptional. Feedback on you's been incredible. Hopefully they're thinking, okay, I like this guy. He's given me, stroking my ego. I'm now going to take his points on board. So I think it's really important we preface with compliment first and then share your advice personally.
I think that is an incredible way to go about it. It also, one of the things we teach here is ACE, which is similar to what you do with the colors and flexing to different buyer styles. So you can actually download the buyer style guide, the ACE buyer style guide on Sales Gravy, or go to Tony's website and find his guide. I'm sure you have.
I'd rather have yours. I haven't heard of it.
It's just a breakdown of different personality
Love
types
it.
and how to flex to them.
Love that.
One of the challenges is, for a strong personality type like us, we can't flex 180%, or 180 degrees. We typically can do a little bit of flexing, but we end up just being who we are.
Yeah.
What you just brought up is it allows you to say to the green buyer, look, I know I am who I am.
Yeah.
And I apologize for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is, don't take it this way. This is how I'm going to present it. And I had a sales conversation yesterday or 2 days ago with a company who's looking to pitch us a solution for, something that's technology based. And the first salesperson I had was not flexing to my style, and we are very much the same. I'm a salesperson, very high energy, very akin to like CEO mindset, and that's just like how I present.
Yeah.
And this person was more of the analytical, very more monotone, very like, let's go through the process. And I spend the entire meeting going like, all right, buddy,
get on with it.
Let's get to the next thing. He brought in a senior salesperson who was just more my style. And he pitched everything at me. He was, maybe a little bit arrogant about it. He asked great questions, but I was vibing with this human being. We spent an hour talking, and so flexing to your different buyer styles is a challenge, but know where your place is.
Absolutely,
and maybe pass along deals to other people.
Well, I was about to say that one. I don't know if you do this in your profile, but I look and I tell my clients color code your prospects. So know that person's more of an ultra red, that person's a strong yellow. And actually, if someone's a strong blue, right, very analytical, I'm not. Now I can show up and give value, show my expertise, give facts and figures, and not have the relationship that you and I would have. However, maybe an ultra blue is better with that person.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say, you know what, George, I actually think you should be speaking to Jeff. I actually think you two will be, I think you two will be on the same level. And I want to make sure you get the best level of advice. And I think sometimes we can do that, you know, and I think it's done with some class and gravitas. I think it goes a long way.
So going back to your business,
Yeah.
you are 12 years of speaking, world-renowned speaker. What are sales organizations not doing that you wish they were doing more often?
Okay. Quite a few things, right? One is genuinely know the motivation and demotivation of everyone in your team. Because what drives you isn't what drives them, right? Even if it's money, what does that actually mean? How much, by when, why, etc. So really know what drives them, but also what doesn't. I always say to leaders, right? Draw a tree, any type of tree, and they'll draw different trees. And then I say, what's the most important part of the tree? The roots. And out of not 100 pictures, 99 don't have the roots because it's below the surface. So when you're, as a leader, you need to go below the surface with everyone. I think that's the first thing. I think number two is understand where they believe their gaps are and coach them. Constant coaching, right? You and I both know, right? Habits take anywhere between 38 and 72 days. So get them building the right habits, not the wrong habits, the right habits. And that's with coaching, supporting, listening to everything on Sales Gravy, and then practice that stuff, right? Because if they don't invest themselves, why should clients invest in them, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, I've been in different organizations, and when you don't have support, training support, you don't necessarily miss it. And I think that's important to note is that like salespeople are never going to say, "Hey, I need more training."
Yeah,
They're never going to tell you that.
No, it's true. Well, you say that. The really good ones
good ones will.
You know, isn't that interesting? The really good ones are like, Tony, what book did you say earlier? And what's that about? Like the greatest salespeople are, well, that's why they're great. They're a sponge, you know, they are a sponge. And if anyone ever says to me, Tony, I've been doing this 40 years, right? 40 years. I'm like, okay, well, if you're happy with never getting better, that's cool. Yeah. And, you know, there's a reason Djokovic is the greatest tennis player of all time because he practices more than any other tennis player, right? He has 7 coaches. But if you're happy playing at your level, that's on you. Because that's the truth, right? The second I say, I've done it for X, what does that mean? Okay, great. Or I've got this level of experience. I don't like experience. I like success. I'd rather have a 21-year success than 58 years of highly average. So I think that's the other point. But going back to your other question of what can leaders do? And I want to take you back to something you said earlier. You said about you think like an entrepreneur and a business owner, right? And the top salespeople do. I always did without being arrogant. I hope I'm not being arrogant I used to think this is my baby. This is my business, right? Because I'm in control of what I earn. Not my boss, not my prospect, me. So in a way, I am a business owner for me. But what salespeople miss is the cost of a lead. So let's say we spend, argument's sake, keep it simple, £1,000 on lead generation, and we get 10 leads. Every lead's worth £100, right? Salespeople don't think like that. So when I give them £100 lead and they phone it 3 times and put it in the bin, I go, did you know how much that one lead just cost you? No, well, it cost you nothing. It cost me £100. You've just thrown £100 in the bin. How dare you?
Yeah.
And when they're like, oh, and I say, so if you were a business owner and I threw your £100 in the bin, how would you react to that? And they're like, oh, I didn't see it like that. So it's getting them seeing it from the business owner's lens. And that's good leadership, in my opinion.
It's that. And what really put this in perspective for me is I worked in this local area where we're sitting right now. I had a massive territory, but my leadership was in a completely different state and in a different territory, in a different city. And I was the only person here in this area.
That's tough.
And it was tough, but it was great because it made me an entrepreneur in the way, in the sense that if I owned the experience of my customer base, they would reward me with more business.
Great.
And if I didn't deliver, if I didn't deliver, not the business, not the corporation,
you delivered on your promises.
It was me, whether I believed it or not. I could say, well, they didn't do their job, or this department didn't do their job. The customer will always think of me.
Of course.
And that's what entrepreneurs do. Like Jeb Blount's name is on this business.
100%.
If he doesn't perform well for customers and they don't appreciate what he's done, it reflects poorly on him. And I think salespeople need to understand that if you're going to be successful in sales, that's the mindset you need to have. You take care of your customer like the business you work for is yours.
1,000,000,000%. It's about the standards, right? Where's your standards? I'm back at HQ here in Georgia for the second time. I've flown around the world to video some content. Now I can do that at home in my studio, but Jeb rightly said, no, we want exceptional quality. And we built an incredible studio. I've never seen anything like it here. He only wants exceptional. And he knows if I'm here with his exceptional team, it will be exceptional, right? And I get it. I respect that. It's standards. And I have the same with my team. And, for me, it's how do they show up, right? How do they show up? Is their car clean? They don't think like that. But for me, if your car's dirty, what are you saying to the prospect that you don't care? If your shirt's hanging out, why didn't you take any pride in that? That's important, right? You are who they're buying, as well as the product, service, the business. So you got to show up how you want your customer for you to show up.
And it's sometimes it's small tweaks. What we're talking about can sound, if your car is dirty, people are saying, well, my car's not dirty, Tony. My hair looks fine, Tony. They're not dirty by any means. They're totally fine, and they're mediocre or medium, or they're doing well. But what we're saying is the devil is in the details.
Correct.
Right. When I was, and I this is going to be arrogant, and I'm okay with that. When I was in the field as a business sales rep selling to small business, like these are like restaurants, these are little offices, little doctor's offices. And, there's a lot of my team that would show up in a polo shirt and, maybe some khakis and tennis shoes. And that's what they did. And it's totally fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Yep.
I showed up in a suit and slacks and nice shoes, because in my mind, if I showed up to your business trying to sell my services that are a commodity, truly a commodity, but I mean, you would see that I mean business.
Yes, correct. You've taken this seriously.
Exactly.
I agree. And that's not arrogant at all. I think I applaud you, and I think you're good on you for doing it, right? I think it's about how much do you care, right? For me, it's just pride in everything you do. If you never want to over-promise and under-deliver, right? It's always got to be the opposite, under-promise, over-deliver, right? So that's the way round, and you should be doing it in every way. And you and I know this, that the best business is referred business, because they sell you to their network, right?
Exactly.
And you're going to convert 8 times better. And the other beauty is you never, ever move on your price, because if they refer you to their best friend, and your best friend said, gee, £100,000 for that. You're like, yeah. Is there any movement? That's what your best friend paid. I'd be insulting him if I did something different to you. So you convert better at the right price. Why wouldn't you look after that client like they're a VIP? And every client should be a VIP, whether they spend 10 grand with you or 200 grand, because you don't know where they're going and you don't know who they know. Because everyone you meet knows someone you haven't. I think it's a really important lesson to think about.
This may offend some folks, but we live in a sort of a society where it's just been kind of, and I'm fairly young. It's sort of been beaten into me that you should be who you are, and other people should accept who you are. And I think that in sales, one of the challenges I see with the younger sales folks is this particular challenge is, okay, I get that you should be who you are and accept yourself, but also understand that perception is reality. And I've shown up on calls and I've been sold to by people who are, my age or a little bit older, or a little bit younger, and they have a hoodie on. It doesn't look like they're taking it very seriously. Right. And they're not taking me very seriously. Whether I show up, with my hair in a mess or not, like, you should show up like Correct. You're going to take this seriously.
Correct.
And that's changed the way that conversations have gone, even with CEOs or C-suite level. If I showed up, not in a suit and tie, but if I showed up like looking like this to these calls, though I looked different than a C-suite person, they at least gave me the room, to prove that I belonged.
They
in the room.
gave you that time. I think something people should be doing, something I recommend for my clients, is check first. Say to your clients that really looking for a meeting you. Just it's a question I always like to ask. What's the dress code where you are? Because if they say t-shirt and shorts, they'll say, okay, well, I'll just, and then you come in a shirt and chinos, or a t-shirt, smart t-shirt and chinos. Because sometimes the problem is if you turn up in a suit, shirt, tie, and they're in t-shirt and shorts, they're like, this guy doesn't get us. So it's the other way around sometimes, Yeah. So an easy way is, number one, ask, but number two, go on their website, see how they're all dressed, and look at their social, their business social, and you can sort of get an idea. If they're so dressed down, you get an idea, right? I'd always rather be smarter, but I don't want to be too smart if they're not. And they're like, he's too stuffy for us.
Right. A tuxedo's not going to do it.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
It
does for James Bond.
It does for James Bond. Yeah, that's fair. I wonder, in your experience with sales organizations and what you observe,
Yeah.
where do you think sales culture is heading in the next 20 years or so? And what are your opinions on kind of the new age of AI and what we've going on? This is a big question I'm asking everybody.
No, of course, it's important. I think it's two things. One, I'm actually quite worried. I'm worried in terms of the youth getting into sales. My son's 16. I adore the ground he walks on. He's very annoying, but I adore the ground he walks on. But he's typical of other 16-year-olds, I say, thinks everything should be served on a plate. And ultimately, they've got the order taker mindset, right? A good salesperson is never an order taker. They're an order maker. Even if business is landing on their lap, where can we embrace that and actually get more out of it? I call it squeeze the lemon, right? Mm-hmm. Who do they know? What's the other sides of the business? Who's their clients? Blah, blah, blah. Who's their suppliers, etc. So I think that's the first thing. My fear is they're coming in expecting, and that's wrong. I think the second thing is AI. So look, there's so much debate. I see it in a positive lens. I see it I can work more efficient. I can streamline. I can be more productive. I see all the positives. Now, you can argue that then don't need salespeople because they're going to have the best bots out there that can think on their feet, show empathy, etc. It might be the case. And then you're screwed, right? Go get another job. But look, will an AI ever replace a human? Who no one can tell you, right? No one can tell you. And I think if it does, okay. And then it's about, right, how do we pivot? Who'd have known 3 years ago that I could never stand on stage and deliver a talk? I'd have been like, are you crazy? But that happened, right? Your dad, Jeb Sr., was a genius because he saw that. Maybe he'd been watching too much Simpsons, but he saw that future and he had it ready, right? He was 5 steps ahead, right? He was ready for it. But when it happened to me, I saw, again, COVID is a great positive because that's why I built my digital content. That's why I'm here right now. Had that not have happened, I've never met Jeb Sr. He wouldn't have gone, I like your content. It wouldn't have happened. So I think with AI, whatever happens, take the positives out of it. That's my opinion.
I like that. I mean, the first point, and I'm the oldest Gen Z, so I'm the very first year of that delineation of 97 or whatever it is. I struggle with this culturally as the expectation, and I freely admit this, and it's a battle. I think that if you are a leader, or if you're in my position and you are looking to be a leader in the future, combat this. When people come into your organization and they're expecting, don't reward it. And also be aware that you're going to probably have to kiss a few toads before you get to your prince, right? Like it's going to take, it may be harder to find the right salesperson than it was 25 years ago.
And I think the final point on that, right, to wrap it up is actually the AI is going to be just another excuse for people. Right, correct. I hear it the whole time of the leads are crap, and I'm like, the leads are crap. You're crap, right? Coffee's for close, but it's true. It goes back to 1980, right? ABC, yes, always be closing should be, but now it's always be curious, in my opinion. However, it's easy to blame stuff, and the second they go, it's not me, it's always you. So take the positive out of AI, but also know it's going to change things and get ready, adapt, because a great salesperson is someone who's agile. Want to learn.
I think what will change, just my opinion on this, is that commodity selling is maybe in trouble. But if you're a good salesperson and you're in those fields, look for opportunities in some complex sales organizations. And,
Correct.
And selling things that are a bit different than what you're currently used to, and go that direction.
The AI is going to be a telephone Amazon. Simple as that. Right. It'll be a telephone Amazon. It will make some clever recommendations based on algorithms. That's probably where it's going in the next year. Who knows where it goes from there?
Who knows? And that's the important thing to remember is it's a train that we're all on and we have no idea where it's going. And frankly, I'm not smart enough to drive the train. So
me neither, my friend. I get lost. I'm at the wrong station. So I'm with you.
Tony, you're awesome. Thank you so much for being on the Sales Gravy podcast and coming to the Sales Gravy headquarters. Just as a quick, before we end, If you're a Sales Gravy fan and you have content and you are in this space, come to the Sales Gravy Studios. We would love to have you as a content contributor. Tony, before we let you go, one, we can find you on Sales Gravy University, but where else can people find Tony Morris?
LinkedIn's probably the best. I'm very vocal there. But otherwise, just literally reach out to me. I love speaking to salespeople, helping them. So Tony@TonyMorrisInternational.com. Ping me an email, go on my socials, however they want to find me.
And pick up coffees for closers.
Definitely pick up coffees for closers.
And what are your other titles of your books? So we get those
So
out there.
to be honest with you, there's 3 or 4, but I'm actually most proud of Coffees for Closers, and I'm now doing another one, Ask Better Questions, Get Better Results. I'm going to be doing that, and potentially with Jeb Senior. So coming soon.
Coming soon. Thank you so much for being here, and thank y'all for listening to the Sales Gravy podcast. We will see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to click like and subscribe so you never miss a single video. And if you want more sales training content, go to learn.salesgravy.com.